Hey, thanks for choosing to spend some of your DEF CON time coming here to listen to this talk. It's digital forensics and Internet of Things and the intersection of the two. The talk's called The Things Know What You Did Last Session, just like the slide says. I look like some over-caffeinated Stone Cold Steve Austin up here swilling a Celsius, but here we are. I'm Will Baggett, former human cyber collection for NATO, soft cyber trainer for them, and actually did the job for CIA for years. Now director of digital forensics for Operation Safe Escape. It's a volunteer assistance group for domestic violence victims. And my day job, I'm lead insider threat digital forensics at a Fortune 25 firm. If I say who they are, corporate has to approve it. There have to be meetings, there have to be more meetings, and pretty soon I might make the talk for DEF CON 40 or 50. So I have a job, I get paid, they're not getting credit here. So this talk's going to cover three different issues. It's going to cover a Chinese voting machine we received at the DEF CON voting village in 2022. It's going to cover a workplace fraud case and the North Korean IT worker issue that has been prevalent in our industry for the past 2 years. Okay. Start off with just some of the bare basics for digital forensic processing. We start off with the collection. You have to have data to work with. It doesn't get more basic than that. From there, once you have a complete image, you do the examination, the analysis, and then it doesn't matter what you've done if you don't write the report and state your findings after the fact. So there's a principle that a perpetrator will come into a crime scene and leave with something from it and take something with them generally, even when it's an edge device, Internet of Things device. That also applies to this principle as well. So again, just the four basics. I know it's 101 stuff, but we all start off now here, and the core is still, it's still going to be applicable as long as we're going to be in business and career. So the first thing, basically, TLDR, if you image a device, you can't change the data. There was a case we talked about last year, the internet, the voting village, where I want to say well-intentioned, but I don't think so, person took a voting machine, drove it to his private compound, changed data, and then said the election was stolen, and I have the proof based on data that he inserted himself, and I believe he might have 3 hots and a cot and some silver handcuffs off of that. You can't steal a device and load your own data because that's theft. Part two, if you're going to do forensics on a device, you have to be qualified by your company, by your employer, by the DoD, by someone to say, yes, this person is qualified to do it. It's not just something you can drop off down at Best Buy's Geek Squad if they're still in business. If you're going to do it, there has to be an audit trail of what's been examined, what's been looked at, where, what, when, and why. Some softwares like Magnet Axiom and Celebrite have an audit trail for what the person looked at. Others like Autopsy or DTEX, where I am, there's no audit trail. Ostensibly, you can, but it's a lot of work to get it. But there's still an effort of this person looked at these files, nothing was changed, the hash values are identical. Last pillar, basically, if you can't, I skipped ahead, sorry. There's only an audit trail that someone else can reproduce. Basically, like the book says downstairs, POC or GTFO. If we can't reproduce the finding, that's going to get tossed out of court or it can't be withheld or can't be used. Last, the person overseeing this, whether it's a manager, superior officer, an army, law enforcement, they have the final say in what goes on with this, and it must go by the law. There's no, but this time we can make an exception. It has to be the same collection process every time. Now, all that said, I feel like a car commercial with the terms and conditions. Just because you upload Rick Astley to a voting machine where you have time, permission, concurrence, free will, a USB drive of who the hell brings a USB of Rick Astley in the year of our Lord 2025, but people do, and it still gets on CNN that a voting machine has been hacked. That's not actually hacking a voting machine. That's just Control-C, Control-V. Have to say it every time because every year since I've been involved with Voting Machine Village since 2017, that's usually the inevitable result that comes out of voting machine hacked with this. Again, getting into the core of the presentation. 2020-21, Hari Hursty procured, founder of the DEF CON Voting Machine Village. He got a voting machine prototype from China that U.S. politicians, unnamed, requested with all their bells and whistles specifications that sounds good. You know, some steering committee met, They decide what would be the best optimal software, hardware for a voting machine. Hari bought the prototype. It was $70,000 plus shipping. 150 pounds to move. It's not something that Meemaw and Peepaw can move in the voting poll center. This sucker was heavy. And to start off with, the voting machine had an LED touchscreen. That's fine. A lot of voting machines do. Has a camera to record you voting. That violates U.S. law. It also records your fingerprint so we can know who recorded the vote for candidate A, candidate B. You can also scan your driver's license. Anybody concerned about this yet? Oh, wait, there's more. Of course, the keyboard, battery, the ticket printer, the machine will not run if it runs out of tape. And if anyone's ever done a corporate expense report using Concur, I can't make the hand gesture, but it's a thermal piece of paper, and that lasts about 15 to 20 seconds before the thermal paper is vanished. Not that bad, but it's pretty bad. And a copy is dropped into the ostensible garbage can underneath for collection for re-audit. So right off the bat, this is failing. But wait, there's more. You two guys in the front can't answer because you've heard this, but where do you get the device manual? Directly from the manufacturer through the Alibaba channel. It's not open source. It's not available for public dissemination. If you buy the voting machine for my precinct, I send you drivers and you patches directly for your individual precinct that open source community can investigate. That's not the way things are generally done in this community. So, cutting to that, we were co-located with the Internet of Things Village. So we're opening, and someone's eager, just start unplugging everything because that's the number one way to do forensics is just fucking unplug everything. This isn't like any traditional device we've seen, hence why we're here and not in, Windows 11 Village. We found the circuit board, and someone actually had the idea to take a photo of it, do reverse image analysis on both TinEye images, Google.com, and Yandex to see if there's anything like it. Turns out this is a normal standard Android board, but we weren't expecting an Android board with open source software inside a $7,000 device. We thought it'd be something a little bit more polished, but here we are. We ended up having to get Trevor and the other folks from the Internet of Things Village to come over and actually do a chip-off extraction. That ran all night. And we came out with 123.8 gigabyte file of just this wall of text after we got done doing the chip-off. So going back to the bare solution on this, the basics, well, one more. The voting machine also had Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, 4G, a bevy of ports on the back for connections. So when it was fired up, there's a tool called a dope scope. It's a monocle style, geez, I feel like a hipster, a monocle style Kali Linux on a Raspberry Pi so you can see the Bluetooth and Wi-Fi networks being created by a device and DFN on it so you can see what's being created. Nothing new is created by this Chinese voting machine, but that's still a concern that we don't have control over what Bluetooth network is being beaconed out when you turn a voting machine on. We eventually got what they claimed was the operating system on there, Android 7.1 OS. But when we went down to, well, I'm ahead of myself. When we imaged it, the other reason this talk is here to support IoT Village, I brought a $1,500 Pelican case for imaging out with me. All the fancy tools, everything else. I don't know if y'all know, but TSA kind of crushes stuff when they go through it. And here's this Pelican case. They're expecting firearms. It's worse. It's just cables. Nothing fun there. The one USB 3.0 Type A to Type B cable got crushed in the end. They just put it in the very edge of the case, shut the lid, and gave it back to me. So the entire kit was destroyed. IoT Village guys were able to rebuild the ends of that, and that comes into this instructor mode slide of 2 is 1, 1 is none. The critical piece that runs the entire imaging for the DEF CON voting machine village was this one cable And now that Fry's is gone, if they hadn't been able to fix it, we could have imaged the hard drive itself. So always plan for the worst and have a backup. Eventually getting to the core basics, it took the 123.8 file, did grep to actually find what OS it was. And then from there, now that we have a known OS, we pivot over to the NIST database. If y'all want to take pictures or whatever, it's out there, it's free, it's your tax dollars. But it's a list of all the known good OS software files, hash values on there. So you can load this database into whether it's Magnet Axiom, Blacklight, Celebrite, whatever, and filter out the known good files so you're only left with the anomalies. So when you have this Chinese voting machine with a ton of unknown files filtering out what's known and what's good and seeing the anomalies, now we can pivot to reverse engineering the malware, the stuff that's not up here just because it's a little more sensitive. But that's how we're able to extract the unknown device, filter it down to what files are of interest, and then we have an advantage to see is this actually a trustworthy machine or not. The consensus among the voting officials has been we absolutely do not want this machine in our precincts, period, full stop. Thank you for the attempt, but this is about probably the worst design we could have ever come up with. Next one, let me check time. Not too many slides on this one. Theoretically, this case didn't happen. But theoretically, if it did, there may have been a phone call that there was a device found in the corporate environment. It was underneath a box, which is already in the year, whatever. That's not sketchy, but there's a power cord going under a box, hidden beneath a bookshelf. They're concerned that it's a bomb, because that's what everyone assumes, it's a bomb. Somebody, probably a janitor, walks over, moves the box, and sees this is an iPhone, older generation iPhone, because, I'll get ahead of myself. They took a picture, sent it to my team. Okay, it's not an explosive, WTF over. With my handle being iOS Forensics, that's what I've worked on since 2007. I could tell right away it's a 30-pin phone. It's not the lightning bolt connector. It's not the USB-C connector it's an older device. Once you go from the 5 to the 6 is much wider, like a really large candy bar versus a narrow 4.5. So, okay, this is an older generation device. It's plugged in. And then to make it worse, the reason there's a robot hand, there are gloves where you can actually touch the device, for people that live where it's cold and not in God's crematorium like Las Vegas. It touches the device. Okay, this is really odd. We don't have any iPhone 4s connected to our network. Pivot over to the guest network, looking for iPhone 4 and Splunk and the connectivity. Find that and see that it beacons out every day at 9 a.m., 5 p.m. So once we're sure this isn't a bomb, like again, that's a big thing people freak out about, whatever. I had to say that's still better than dealing with Jira, but that's probably too dark. We looked at this and saw this is registered, also an OSINT tip. Don't register your device in true name. Don't have Will's iPhone connecting to the network. And definitely don't have, the name of the contractor and his company on the iPhone. So, okay, there's that. And we looked for similar and saw not just his, but ostensibly multiple other coworkers for that contractor. They had it set with these devices every day at 9 a.m. They would click on the device to log into our site, and 5 p.m. log off ostensibly on this site for time card fraud, where they never actually had to show up to work. It was just completely automated. Yeah, so Internet of Things, the traces were still there on the network, and the visual analysis helped us queue in Splunk to see what was there. But getting into this, looking at the device, again, there's no photos because I like keeping my job, and this never happened. This is ostensible, allegedly. So because it's connected and plugged into power, it's not battery driven, which means it can be left behind for a long period of time. That means it has a higher level of collection or output because it can constantly connect to the internet and beacon out. But if it didn't have power, it's going to have a lower collection and storage is going to be limited as well. So these three alone are going to tell you what's there. For example, if it's a USB drive recording audio only, those are good for 128 hours of audio and battery, but someone physically still has to go into the site, retrieve it, and pick it up. So it's going to tell you what type of collection operation is being conducted against organization. Because this was connected to Wi-Fi for exfil and had power, we knew this was a leave behind device. Plus, once you log in and see that contractor's ID, you can correlate the badge logs within Splunk. We'll get to that with North Koreans as well. And you can see this person is just purely committing time card fraud for a job. All he has to do is show up 8 hours a day in this economy, get a paycheck, but he went +1 to get creative, and now he's upgraded to being a customer of the company instead of being a contractor. The last one in the talk is the North Korean IT worker. Anyone familiar with this issue? Heard a couple of talks on it? We went with the theme that the Trojan unicorns. They look like the absolute best possible candidate. They've always got 10 years experience, no more, no less. It's like a bad Monty Python skit. They're the master of everything. They have a resume that looks like the best of the best. They've never accomplished anything, but it's familiar with, worked in. They don't have any analytics, but they look great. So one of the people in the threat hunting chat said, they love calling themselves minions. They see Kim Jong-un as Gru. They know they're just the minions collecting revenue from their day jobs, sending it back to him. So the North Korean workers are brought to you by the red, white, and Gru. Again, getting back to the Internet of Things angle on this, generally, these are remote workers. They've never been on site. When they get a physical asset, it is typically sent to a known North Korean laptop farm where it might be a U.S. resident's house, 20, 30, 100 laptops there, all maintaining different personas, where you'll have 2 or 3 people going through, logging in every day in Teams, maybe attending meetings, maybe not. The camera never works. But this has become such an issue now that the IoT and telemetry is out there. We can tell what's happening. The biggest one is a Pi KVM. Anyone in the audience have one of these? One. How much was it?
I've signed up for the Kickstarter. I think I got it for like $200 or $300.
Okay, $200 or $300 for him. The ones we've seen, not arguing, are around $800 for this model. This isn't an accidental device. This isn't the vendor was giving a swag in the hall on the mountain floor. This is an intentional device that connects 20 devices, 20 different network connections to one keyboard, mouse, and monitor, so that one person can have up to 20 different jobs at the same time, collect 20 streams of revenue from North Korea, send it back to bypass sanctions that help fund the North Korean nuclear effort. Also, they're getting access to load malware, and you've now got the insider threat loading command and control software too for part 3 of the operation. All right, more audience participation. Who's got an iPhone? A couple people. Who's got an Android? Who's got a Linux emulator? Of course, yeah. My North Korean friend over here. It's not a common thing for the majority of the community. But when we're looking at North Koreans, skip ahead to a slide, and we're using either Splunk with the 2FA logs or looking in Microsoft Defender, it's going to be column A or column B. Most people are going to have, you can see here, they're either going to have the Linux device. The smart people have no device connected because Teams 365 collects everything you do on your phone. And everything, that's a whole different talk. Or it's going to be the iPhone. Having the anomaly is going to stick out. So you multiply the Pi KVM and then the Linux emulator device. We're going to dig into that further because now you've got a third-party contract worker with these 2 other TTPs of North Koreans, and you have a problem. So if we got 5 minutes left, we're almost at the home stretch. We look at the device connections. What iPhones are connected, because instead of just, most of us only have one device, they'll have multiple devices connected to the same instance, whether you're looking at Redripper, Autopsy, or Detex, whatever UBEA tool you've got, forensic tool, multiple connections for one account is a major anomaly. Same for the wireless headphones. AirPods are not cheap. And to see multiple pairs of AirPods connected to one remote device over the day, that's another clue that we've got a North Korean. Another is the 2FA numbers. This is the data that's collected from your 2FA process. I don't know how familiar. I was surprised once I got to Insider Threat to see how much 2FA collects on you. Geolocation, latitude, longitude, if this is actually where you say you're working and you're running off a VPN while you're working from the Caribbean, that's going to beacon out. So this is all OSINT we can collect on as 2FA. Something as simple as Duo makes it this easy for your admins to collect all that PII on you. And getting down into the OSINT on the Internet of Things, love this one. It's spydialer.com. I don't work for them, but it's a free tool. You put in the phone number and you can listen to someone's voicemail as well as see who the TCOM provider is or if it's a Linux emulator or VoIP number. Again, all this combined is going to give us more credibility for this is a person we need to investigate versus, yeah, he had a Pi KVM, but it's actually a Dell monitor. This person's clear. We can stop the investigation. Digging further, the Wiggle.net that the Hard Hat Brigade collects on so frequently for DEF CON, we'll take the IP address from the 2FA to drop it to see if this person's actually working there or if it actually relocates back to a North Korean farm. Same for Splunk badge logs. Your badge logs, I'm sure we know this, but there's so much in cyber that, oh yeah, that makes sense. You just don't think about it. The badge logs are also an ingestible log for Splunk, so we can co-locate that. They say they're badging in, but the laptop's at the farm and they've got an emulator. Let's terminate access, investigate, and see what they've been doing to protect the company, because odd is just odd sometimes. But I think we're about out of time. The short version, the devices change, the tradecraft doesn't, the principles don't, and you have to put out the fire first, then identify the arsonist. Trying to identify the arsonist of the North Korean while they're still inside the company just doesn't work well. So that's it. This flew by. Any questions, comments, concerns? Get off the stage. Yes.
How hard is it to just ask the voice video call?
That's one of the hallmarks. That's a whole different, not shutting you down, that's a whole different talk. They've got tons of excuses why the video conference don't work. I was on one call, we asked them just simply, walk to the window. They said they were in North Virginia time zone. It was pitch black outside, Beijing time zone. Just walk to the window. I'm sorry, Wi-Fi doesn't reach my window. I can see your window like 5 feet, but you're not going to lose that much connectivity if you just do this. Or to quote Lil Jon, turn the laptop from the window to the wall. Just do that. And usually they'll disconnect, they won't come back on. Another one is watching the guys in the back so I know when I'm over talking. You just flat out human of, if your name is Bob, hey Alan, how you doing? And if they just roll with it, because to quote Robert Downey Jr., if they're playing a dude who don't know what dude he is, they're going to take whatever you take as gospel truth and not correct you because they've forgotten who they are. Or if, oh, that weather's terrible in Las Vegas, horrible rain, and it's this. Just a little bit of human style misdirection to see if they're being truthful with you or just they know they're being caught. These people get fired so many more times than the average worker. But any other questions before they get chased off the stage? All right. Thank you.